Welcome back to Quantum Conversations. My name is Sara, and today my co-host Carrie, Bennett, and I are going to be making these complex topics of quantum biology and circadian biology understandable to the everyday person. Thank you so much for tuning in. We ask that if you are listening on audio only, that you take a moment to leave us up to a 5-star review. And if you're on YouTube, leave us a like, leave us a comment. It will help to get the show out to more people. And before we jump into today's topic, just a quick reminder to head down to the show notes and check out my free resources as well as Carrie's free resources. We also do have courses on a variety of topics. If you are hoping to dive deeper, Carrie and I both have practitioner courses available as well for anyone who wants to begin to bring these topics to their clients and help them to implement these strategies into their daily lives. So check those out. We also have a co-taught course called Quantum Fertility that is available that allows people and practitioners to work on their fertility using these principles of quantum biology and circadian biology. Again, thank you so much for listening or watching today's show, whichever one you are doing. And let's go ahead and jump into it now. Hello, welcome back to Quantum Conversations. As you can see, we have Dr. Sara Pugh with us here today. And what are we talking about today, Carrie? Let's jump into it.
So the impetus for this was Dr. Sara interviewing Stephanie Seneff about glyphosate, and I think glyphosate. And listen, if you don't listen to Dr. Sara's podcast, which is is it Busy Superhuman on YouTube?
Yes.
You have to. She literally, if you like this quantum stuff, she literally interviews the best people and asks the best questions. So go there and listen to and follow her stuff. But this latest one that I listened to was with Dr. Seneff. And Dr. Seneff, for those of you who don't know, she's a brilliant researcher who connects so many dots. Mm-hmm. And she's really connected a lot of dots about glyphosate and methylation, glyphosate in terms of autism, the gut, you name it. And so I think we're starting to realize how pervasive glyphosate is, but I don't think we realize how damaging it really is. So I want to talk all about glyphosate, both from what it's potentially doing to us so we're aware, but then I think we need to end with, okay, well, what are the strategies then to support these different things that we know are being impacted?
Perfect. I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, interestingly, when I did my degree, I did genetics, and that's when the Roundup Ready soybean had just come out, because that's part of the problem is that the reason people think glyphosate is safe is because humans don't have a shikimate pathway or an EPSP synthase enzyme. And when they made, it was the era of GMO crops, the sort of first round, and they made glyphosate resistant soybeans and things. And the farmers just went absolutely crazy and sprayed glyphosate really just all over the place. And I think that was the trigger for the problem. But I just so people know, it's not directly toxic to us. But then I think what we've been talking about is it's kind of very insidious because it's indirect problems.
I am going to say something, though. I think it's a mitochondrial poison.
Oh, yeah, it will be, because bacteria, your mitochondria are also a bacterium.
Yeah. And so you said glyphosate, right? It's the Roundup, right? People in my neighborhood still spray Roundup a ton. I don't think people realize it, right? That we're talking about glyphosate sprayed on crops to basically allow crops to grow faster without being destroyed, by pests. And that really, essentially was a good thing for food scarcity solutions. But that was the idea, but they didn't realize the ramifications, because you're right? We don't have the pathway that can interact with glyphosate, but unfortunately, our gut microbiome absolutely does. Our mitochondria are being destroyed by it. So let's talk there first, because I think one of the first things that it's important to understand, especially in line with what Sara and I talk about in terms of quantum support, is this idea, we talk about these aromatic amino acids, right? Mm-hmm. And how these amino acids get converted with light into things like serotonin and dopamine and melanin, norepinephrine. And if we're lacking in that particular pathway in the gut because we're not making those aromatic amino acids the way we're designed to, we can be getting as much sunlight, as we possibly want during UVA rise, but not necessarily feeling the benefits because of this particular impact of glyphosate.
Yeah.
So what's the shikimate pathway?
It's just a pathway that plants and microbes use to make aromatic amino acids, which will be phenylalanine, tyrosine, and tryptophan.
Right. And so we need those.
Yes, because also they're essential for that's why it kills plants so quickly, but it also dehydrates or desiccates plants. So it's particularly problematic for seed-based or crops, because you can basically, it doesn't matter if it dies because it's already made the seed. So it's like a desiccant. And unexpected crops have got glyphosate in them. But I think I want to loop back to what you said, that people need, I don't like scaring people about things, but I want people to, we can stop spraying it on our gardens, or our backyards. Whereas the crop thing, we can choose, not to buy or eat produce. Whereas the whole backyard spraying business, that's affecting everybody. And that's how the glyphosate got into all the honey, because the FDA tested it and they found 100% of the honey contained glyphosate. So it travels through the air, and also it's got into the water as well. So it's just, I think that the public who are spraying it, even if your neighbor does, you might want to ask them to stop it, because that's one thing we can control. Because I was saying to Sarah earlier, I don't mind scaring people about deuterium because they can control their own deuterium, but I don't want to scare people about glyphosate. But, I always want to give people something, well, okay, what can I do?
Yeah, totally. So if you're listening to this, yes, glyphosate is everywhere. Yes, it's one of the reasons why we're seeing health declines. Like you said, maybe contamination, declining of the bee population. There's a lot that I think glyphosate has done to destroy the soils that we're growing our food in. But you can support local farmers who can't necessarily afford to be certified organic, because that can cost a lot of money, but they understand these ideas of regenerative farming practices and non-chemical farming practices. So what I do in my family is I try the best I can to shop at those small farmers markets, right? Those small sustainable farms. We don't spray a darn thing in our yard. Thankfully, we live on the hill in our neighborhood. So the people who do spray, they're downhill. So our soil is less likely to be impacted by it. But yeah, so like you can make certain choices so that we filter our water, right? So distillation and reverse osmosis as a filtering to get it out of the water that you're drinking. All those things can go a long way towards drastically reducing your glyphosate exposure.
Yeah, and air purifiers inside the house, keeping the home air clean. We've got air doctors in every room here, because I know we're in the middle of like a big urban environment. So I know we've just got neighbors on all sides. So it's like, you just have to control what you can. And like, the good news is I know that a lot of what we're doing is working. We've done some glyphosate testing on my daughter, just because, as you mentioned, Dr. Seneff has really, really talked about this autism glyphosate connection. And when we were doing the functional medicine testing, which we're not anymore, that was one of the things that the doctor was looking at. Her glyphosate test was like, I've never seen one that's this low before. So whatever you're doing with the food for you and your family is clearly working. So there are things you can do. I don't want people to, like you and Sarah saying, I don't want people to feel powerless about this. So
yeah, absolutely. And so interestingly, with glyphosate, so we know it kind of disrupts that pathway where our gut microbiome are making these aromatic amino acids that we use for serotonin, dopamine production, as I said before. But I think what I want to talk about, especially also in light of the kind of like the connection to autism, is dysregulation of sulfur. And sulfation and sulfate, because I don't think this is talked about anywhere near enough. But this has implications for so many things, from cardiovascular health to detoxification capabilities, you name it, right? There's so much that we could talk about when it comes to sulfur and needing to support sulfur. So how do we get this conversation started, Dr. Sara?
I suppose with sulfur, we could talk about where it's important in the body. For example, we need the heparin sulfate to line the arteries and the gut so the EZ water can come and form on it, because a lot of people complain about leaky gut. So if you haven't got enough heparin sulfate and DHA in the membrane, the EZ water won't form as well. And as we know, it's an exclusion zone, so it's a barrier, and it's a way to make your gut seal up again. And then again, a lot of people have concerns about blood flow and heart disease. And I've said before lots of times, the health of any organ depends on how good its blood supply is. So again, the sulfate's really important in the heparin sulfate, but also it does a dance with nitrate, that the sulfate can make the blood flow a bit slower, and then nitrates or nitrogen or nitric oxide or urea can make the blood flow quicker. So we've got this really intricate control of blood flow speed. Then the link with autism is actually the sulfation pathways, because the reason that glyphosate is a problem is it inhibits, it's called PAPs, it's the universal sulfate donor. And then there are enzymes called sulfur transferases, and they move sulfurs around the body, around different sort of compounds in the body. Then to do with the idea of transportation, we need to sulfate things like melatonin, cholesterol, sex hormones, so they can be transported in the body, because the sulfur makes them water soluble. And one of my favorite molecules at the moment is cholesterol sulfate, because it is actually cardioprotective. It's really important for stabilizing cell membranes, especially blood cells, so they don't burst, but also it's important for sperm capitation. That's like the end stage development of sperm. So we do know that fertility is going down, and this is how glyphosate, or how Dr. Senef and I think that the glyphosate is affecting fertility, or one of it's stopping the sperm fully maturing. So it's sometimes with fertility, the woman tries really hard, and then we neglect to sort of look to see what's going on with dad. And then again, for men who are listening, that the sulfur is going to attach to their DHEA and their testosterone, so it can be transported around. So it's really relevant for both sexes' hormones.
Oh, yeah. I'm just trying to think of like looking at different hormone panels. I think the only sulfate hormone that I see tested is DHEA, right? Yeah. I don't see any of the other hormones tested. So would you say that if someone has, let's say, a consistently low DHEAS, they might want to look into this? Do they want to test other forms of sulfated hormones? The other thing that this is what I typically see that is a clinical indication that this pathway is being disrupted, is something along the lines of like chronically low DHEAS in spite of doing all the quantum hormone balancing and supports, plus always having a elevated LDL, because that's an alternative transportation mechanism for a lot of things like vitamin D and cholesterol as well, right? When it's not sulfated, they have to basically get transported on these lipid rafts. So yeah. For me clinically, I'm thinking, oh, interesting, there may be an issue with the sulfur pathways.
But also, as we were, just to digress a tiny bit, because glyphosate chelates cobalt, you're going to have massive problems with cobalamin B12. So people who've got persistently low B12, I mean, obviously, if they supplement, the result's useless. But I can't emphasize this enough about people try and give me one lab and expect me to interpret it. Because again, on another subject, I've just ordered it's called the Full Monty. So it's sort of the panel to do with copper and Morley Robbins kind of
Morley stuff,
and it's like I've ordered the full vitamin D panel, because again there's sulfation. So I think when it comes to these labs, you need to know what to look at in sort of pairs or fours or fives, because I'm nearly there with this particular rabbit hole. But it's just, if somebody comes and says, oh, I've got high triglycerides, it's like, well, show me everything else.
Yeah.
I like that idea of
that constantly in my group.
Yeah, no, I had it this morning. But yeah, and it's all, I think that's a really good idea, because the DHEAS is the only the direct sulfation. I'm trying to think of anything else, but then we could always, like I was going to say, you'd maybe have a folate issue because, as we maybe get into later, glyphosate massively impacts the methylation. So for people who are just new to this, we're sort of MTHFR territory. So it doesn't matter what your SNPs are or whether you take methylated B vitamins, you're looking in the wrong place.
Homocysteine, right, as a means of trying to generate sulfur, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And it's also, and you need methyl groups to make methionine. And if you don't have enough of those, because your gut microbiome can't make hydrogen, which then makes methane, and it was the glyphosate that triggered that. So definitely, I think high homocysteine is another thing. If somebody's got that, I would think glyphosate. And then low HDL can indicate leaky gut. So that would be back to, and then bun creatinine being funny, that can be hydration, but that's generally the water the mitochondria make. But yeah, that's a really good point. We sort of should build a panel that is a glyphosate. Yeah.
Oh, is it glyphosate? Yes, we totally should connect it. And then and what is it impacting? Is it impacting your methylation pathways more? Here's what we're going to look at. Is it impacting your digestion? Yeah. Okay. Have you talked about or looked into where this comes into play? This is slightly off topic with SIBO. I'm just thinking, like, as you said, because with SIBO, you often have an overgrowth of things like methane, like methanogens, right? And overgrowth. So you'll have hydrogen producing or hydrogen-based, hydrogen dominant SIBO. You can have methane dominant SIBO. I see these as compensatory mechanisms for methyls and hydrogen, like basically when it's hydrogen and methyls, when it's lacking because of something like this glyphosate disruption.
Yeah, I don't know the answer there, because there's certain subjects that if you ask me something, you're just going to, the emoji with the mouth, with no mouth. So if you mention SIBO or parasites, then you get the no mouth emoji. So I really don't know. And it's one of these things, it's like when you break down a person who comes with SIBO and look at everything they're doing, there's always something else, like an EMF or a phone addiction, or is secretly eating food and not telling me. So it's one of these things I don't know. I'm just going to let you two say about the SIBO and the methanogens, because I think it's, even though I did do a lot of microbiology at university when I was working in a lab, I just stay well away from it. And
no, I get it. Yeah. I have a working hypothesis that's another way that sulfur is trying to get regulated in the body. And also the migrating motor complex is messed up. So there's slow gut motility. So that means that there's the potential for this overgrowth to just take hold. And without dealing with both of those things from a circadian perspective and the potentially the glyphosate sulfur metabolism, it's just not going to resolve itself with all these killing protocols. So
what do you think about, because you mentioned, like, would you say that there's too much methane or too much hydrogen? Because would taking hydrogen water or inhaling hydrogen be a part of this? Because we've talked about hydrogen lots of times being an antioxidant and a universal energy giver, but it's actually tied into the methylation cycle. So do you think that hydrogen water from the Lord's Hydrofix or inhaling is a way to help SIBO? Because I think it might be.
I think it is. Yeah, I think it kind of depends on it depends on which potential bacteria is being overgrowth, where there's the bacterial overgrowth that's taking over. You can have the methane, the methanogens dominating, but in general, I generally think that that the body is trying to adjust its bacterial population, like you said, basically to produce molecular hydrogen and methane to act as the hydrogen as an electron donor, the methane as a methyl donor, to just optimize human physiology. When the alternative routes to get those the methyl and the molecular hydrogen, i.e. sunlight on the skin, right, as a way that we could make it via melanin. I think these are just kind of like backup mechanisms when the main pathways are impaired.
But also, this is another thing that annoys me, is there's the fungal microbiome and there's 1 trillion of them. So why are the bacteria so important? Because how do we know that it's not something wrong with the fungi? And Merlin Sheldrake's written a whole book on fungi. That's Rupert Sheldrake's son, just for people who...
interesting.
And obviously, Paul Stamets is a big mushroom man. But this is why I think there's a humongous piece of the jigsaw missing, and we're just focusing on the bacteria. But then there are other things in the gut, like amoeba and other parasites. And when I was talking to Dr. Senef, she said all of these love eating deuterium. So they basically eat deuterium for us. So if we're killing parasites that weren't doing any harm, and we don't even know anything about the fungal microbiome. There's trillions of them. I just think we're trying to draw conclusions with only half of the picture. That's why I just don't know, that's the thing.
No, I totally agree with you. I feel like to think that we know everything there is to know about the human body, it's just, we know the tip of the iceberg in terms of every aspect of it. So my whole clinical lens for all of this is less like, we got to kill those parasites or we got to kill that. It's like, no, something's off about the terrain. And for me, the terrain means the voltage, right? The redox of a tissue. If there's lack of exclusion zone water, which is lack of redox, that tissue is going to falter, like the function is going to falter. And then there's going to be backup mechanisms that are turned on that might produce symptoms, but they're not, that they could be just symptoms of the backup mechanisms getting turned on. The human body isn't trying to kill us. Right? It's trying to correct us back to homeostasis based on the information it has and the voltage that it has, essentially. So I'm always about let's take the body and make sure that we're producing the appropriate, cellular hydration, voltage, exclusion zone water where it's needed. And then I hate to say it, but almost everything else really starts to regulate itself, or you can start to pinpoint whether or not Candida really is causing an issue, or if it's just there because the voltage is such that it can thrive.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because you can get the gut. I know hydrogen switch. The antibiotics send the gut polarity one way, and then hydrogen can send it the other. But again, fair enough. Candida is a yeast, so at least we've mentioned one of the fungi. But I don't know. I think it's an interesting idea. But I think also the body not being stupid and doing things to be helpful, and then we call it disease. I agree there.
Yeah, totally. All right. I digress. Sorry.
But I think also you reminded me of something else, that with the killing protocols, because with glyphosate, that no matter what, we're going to invent we'll get rid of glyphosate, and whatever we invent is going to be worse. And then I've been reading The Moth and the Iron Lung, which is all about DDT, lead arsenate, and then polio becoming nasty when it was harmless. We've had polio for millions of years. And then there's been all kinds of there's like paraquat, which was an insecticide that looks a bit like dopamine, and it gave people Parkinson's. And there's DMP, which is a really interesting herbicide. But it does other things as well, because it's got certain medicinal uses. So no matter what, there's always been worse things, and then we're always going to make something else. And I think I did say, whenever you try to kill insects or parasites or grass or weeds, you're going to hurt yourself. That's why I'm so against these killing protocols, because how do you know you're not killing
something that needs to be there?
Yeah, or we've got so many weird little cells in the gut, because I know we've got cells in our gut that love eating butyrate, and I'm not an expert on these cell morphologies, but how do we know we're not accidentally killing some kind of something that we need? And there are so many weird bacteria in there that make things that we don't know about. Right. And then, like I said, how do we know we're not going to kill some fungi that are health? This is like my idea, that no matter what we use to kill, history has shown that it always ends in tears. And no matter what we invent next to kill something, because isn't that thing that people use for SIRS, what's it called? Cholestyramine. Isn't that some kind of rat poison or something originally?
Something like that.
I don't know.
Because that depletes cholesterol, but I'm sure it's got some other use. And it's this whole killing. I'm just being a biochemical a biochemical pacifist. Yeah.
Can you make a T-shirt, please, and wear that all around?
Yes, I will do. I've got loads of quantum T-shirts and quotes and things.
Biochemical pacifist. Yeah, no. The more I learn about the body, and even as you two know, I've gone down the rabbit hole of ether physics and the biofield and things like that. Compassion and perfect sharing. So really quickly before we get back to glyphosate, and this is a theory that I totally believe. This is Dan Winter, and for those of you,
Dan,
he's such a fun human being, and energetically, the only shareable waves that can compress and make their way past the 0 point into the body and then, essentially become part of us are the waves that are in harmony with each other. Those are waves that are in resonance. They're compassionate waves. They're shareable waves. They're the golden ratio. They multiply and add recursively to accelerate charge. The ether is charge. We're imploding charge. And as we do that, we're imploding the waves. It literally, he says, there's no chance that the human body can have pathologic infections, parasites, even energetic parasites. Those exist, right? If you are imploding the charge in this very constructive way, because they literally get excluded. Those waves cannot make their way into your physiology, and the field informs the physical. So if your field doesn't contain that information, the physical will not be affected. And so that's, again, why it's like, I'm so less about, like you said, killing. It's like, you can tend to your body in so many different ways that are supportive to your physiology, that don't view your body as fighting against you, trying to harm you, going into disarray, and parasites, like all those things. I'm pulling back on them so much over the past 5 years because of my understanding of things like that.
And it's like it's almost like this cult-like behavior out on YouTube and everywhere, just everywhere is like, I have to kill these parasites. I have to kill this mold. I have SIRS. I have this, I have that. I'm not saying that people aren't struggling and suffering with these things and they're not real. They don't exist. My daughter checked off all the boxes on all of that on her labs. And I was told, we got to do all these protocols. And my entire body said, absolutely hell no. Am I putting any of that crap in my daughter's body to make her better? Like, I knew energetically that was horrible. And what I'm seeing across the board, you guys can both chime in, is people are getting worse from these protocols. I am not seeing miraculous healing from these killing protocols. I don't know. What do you see?
The same, just that's why I brought up the cholestyramine. People are like 9 or 12 months in on this. And I just think messing about with cholesterol is the stupidest thing ever, because it just does so much in the body. And it's a time crystal. It makes our sex hormones. It holds our cell membranes together. It's sort of a bit like insulin and cortisol, that we'd be dead without it. And it's like, it's this demonized thing. And also, I just need to remind, it's going to really annoy me about where cholestyramine actually originates. But I just think it's this idea of sort of, is SIRS even real? I'm sure the symptoms are. I'm not, like Sara says, but I'm just so wary about all of what goes on in the background. Like what we were talking about this morning about LabCorp and who owns it, because this is, I'll digress here because I'm doing all this.
I did a bunch of labs too. We've been doing labs. That's what she comes here. We just run labs for. Yes. Not just kidding, but.
Yeah. So like, yeah, exactly. We do experiments and
experiments.
Yeah. Well, what it was I've got into the vitamin D rabbit hole and then everything else and everything. And if you want to test active vitamin D, because the vitamin D that you get normally is the storage one. So the result is useless without the active. And in order to process the active properly, it has to be frozen immediately and sent off to be analyzed, because it's got a really short half-life. And only Quest does this. Whereas in LabCorp's instructions, they just say, do whatever you like with a sample. However, if you look into who owns LabCorp, it's got its finger in Roche that makes cancer drugs. It makes osteoporosis drugs. It makes supplements. It makes vitamin C. So it's in their best interest to make people think, oh, I've got terrible active vitamin D. So they go and take a load of D supplements, which then obviously, if we followed Jim Stevenson Jr. and Morley and lots of other people who say don't supplement because it'll really mess you up. But I just found that really interesting, that sort of LabCorp having its finger in pies. So therefore it can, you can deliberately influence data by not processing a sample how it should be processed, and then sell people drugs later along the line. So to bring that back to SIRS, I just think that there's something financially going on with SIRS, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Sorry to just say it as it is.
No. I mean, I haven't gone down that rabbit hole, but I trust you, Sara. And I think, Sarah Kleiner, you have seen this with your daughter too. And I've seen this with multiple clients. It's like, when you start to do those functional tests for things, we don't just have one thing, right?
Yeah.
It's Lyme
multiple.
plus mold plus
Parasites
plus, right? And
SIRS.
to me, SIRS, right? A histamine intolerance, to me, it's indicative of really
water.
Low exclusion zone water.
Low exclusion zone water, which allows these things to take hold, right? And maybe affect, whereas otherwise they'd be excluded, and a nervous system that views everything as a threat.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
So,
100%.
I mean, you change the terrain of the exclusion zone water. Literally, when I was at that conference that Tracy hosted, right, a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Pollack showed the coolest slide ever that showed that when cells drain to a certain voltage, and it's different depending on the cell, right? Because different tissues need a certain cellular voltage for health. But when the cells reach a critical threshold, they get the signal to divide uncontrollably. And that, whether malignant or benign, it's so like, this cellular voltage is not just like, oh yeah, it's hydration. No, like literally, this can turn cells from like healthy to cancerous like that, right? And so if you don't have adequate exclusion zone water, you're allowing stuff into a cell to start to create inducible nitric oxide, right? That's a nitric oxide that should be transiently turned on. But if it's on for too long, you're talking about the mitochondria. All of a sudden, you're losing mitochondrial function because that's gumming up step 4 of the electron transport chain to make water. And then the backlog of changing in mitochondrial membrane potential, reactive oxygen species, cell danger response, right? But all of it stems back to, is there adequate exclusion zone water inside of the cell?
Yeah, exactly. It all comes back to how much power have you got? Have you got enough melanin? Have you got enough vitamin D? Because that traps UVB. How big is your water battery? How much deuterium have you got? Because deuterium's got a different dielectric constant to water when it forms water, so it's much lower. So it's like an old battery in an iPhone that just goes flat by lunchtime. So there's all of these different elements that contribute to how much power we've got. So I kind of was making this PDF earlier. It's all about hormones. It's free for people. It'll be ready tomorrow. And it was just about exactly what you said. Okay, people understand they haven't got enough charge or redox, but I'm really breaking things down to super simple, because I'd say half the people don't know what redox is, maybe 75% couldn't define it, and go and explain to Nancy in Missouri. That's what Morley always says, or Karen in London. And people don't understand, and I've got no idea what people think. I'd love to go out on the street and just say, hey, have you ever heard of redox? What do you think it is? When people go around, there was once this really funny one about this guy went around and asked everybody, when you burn fat, where does it go?
Oh yeah.
And people were like, oh,
they poop
sweat.
it out.
It floats away, and they didn't get a single person that said, oh, actually carbon dioxide the carbon is how the mass goes. And also, people sometimes who've been following people or us for ages are too embarrassed to say, I don't know something really simple, like I don't know what an electron is. So they don't want to ask because they think they'll get laughed at. Whereas the whole redox thing, like you said, yes, it is water, but also like I try and find all these other things that could provide energy in the body. And actually, Dr. Seneff was talking about how methyl groups can feed protons into the mitochondria. So again, that's another way to get energy. And of course, it doesn't matter whether it's cloudy because the weather's shit today, but there's still loads of near infrared.
Always.
So I think the name of the game, for me, clinically, the name of the game, like you said, is to understand free energy, how the body can get free energy and have clients maximize that and take the mindset away from food obsession.
Yes,
please.
Right. Yes, deuterium. Listen, I think deuterium is important to understand, and glyphosate on food is important to understand, but too many people are myopically focused on what they're eating and not realizing you can literally redox is energy, right? You can literally max out on energy using non-food sources if you understand how the body operates at that scale. And listen, what's an electron is a fine question, but the problem is that I don't think an electron is actually a particle.
Oh, no, it's fine. Well, it definitely doesn't orbit the nucleus to start with.
Yeah, exactly.
This is one of these things with Sarah and I always talk about. When people ask a question, it's like, when you learn a foreign language and you go and ask directions to the beach to a native and they reply and you have got no idea what the answer is. Like, if we asked, I'm trying to think who do we know that knows the most about quantum physics that we could ask, what's an electron? Oh, Tom Cowan. And then we wouldn't understand. They would get this amazing answer. And we wouldn't understand a word of
That's
it.
the thing. Like, people ask me questions like, how does the TCA cycle interact with the mitochondria. And I'm like, why do you need to know?
And also, will you even understand the answer that I give you? No, we're not being horrible.
So my clients can understand. I'm like, your clients are never going to ask you that.
They're not going to.
Client is going to say, why can't I burn fat for fuel? Why do I feel like crap? Why do I have fatigue? Why do I have brain fog? Why do I feel just like crap all the time? You have low, easy water. You have low redox function.
Clients don't even care about that either.
They don't.
Your cellular energy
want to feel better.
Exactly. Pain point solution, right? Pain point solution. They don't care what the solution is as long as it works. So
they don't need to know about the TCA cycle and the mitochondria. Then go read Nick Lane and like have a blast and see if you can understand that. But like,
yeah, exactly. But also, I think that just reminded me about, energy status in the body, because it's not just molecule. It's like your dopamine status like dictates your energy level, but also so does thyroid. But Carrie's known about me going crazy about thyroid panels because we can't run reverse T3 in the UK because it's like $200, whereas it's $30 here. So mine was amazing. And it's like, it's all back to just because your ordinary thyroid hormones aren't the greatest, it doesn't mean the whole system's not working. Because in order for them to work, you need the thyroid receptor to form a dimer with the vitamin A receptor, and it has to be properly hydrated. So it's like if you've got those two together, it doesn't really matter about T3 and T4 because reverse T3 is the real kicker. And lots of labs turn up for me and it's not there. And then it's like it's useless. And then there was the whole TPO antibody thing because I had slightly raised antibodies for the first time ever. They were like under 100, but to me it was like, oh no, I must stop it. But it was also like, again, TPO's like $30, and there's all these interesting things that I've found, and it's got nothing to do with I haven't got Hashimoto's. We're just kind of unpicking what's the different things, and then it led into because they went down after I got here. But was it the tower? Was it the hydrogen? Was it the high UV index? And then some really funky stuff's happened with vitamin D, which I'll go into another time. But I just want to say about the thyroid, people are just looking in the wrong place. And like you say, there's a whole other world to what thyroid's up to. And leptin, of course, controls reverse T3, and then the sun controls leptin. So
and I like what you said about the receptor taking on the correct shape, like that heterodimerizing, and then the water, right? Like
it has to be,
half the time I think that the receptor is just insensitive to the signal in the first place. Because of that. And that alone can provide so much support there.
Yeah, exactly. And also then the other thing I was looking into, if you've got too much iron in your liver, then, this is something I was talking to Sarah about. Again, the more I do lab tests, the more I go off them, same as you, because it's a snapshot. Also, you're doing weird things to the blood and creating artifacts, but also all of these different hormones and these things we measure in the blood also live in bone and organs. So how do we know that where they're meant to be living is right? And how do we know when just not measuring stuff spilling over?
Right. That's why we don't measure deuterium in the blood.
Yeah, exactly.
In saliva. Because
we always measure in the blood.
You'd freak the hell out.
My blood deuterium is so high. Well, it's supposed to be.
Yeah, because also the reason this started is because with my vitamin D number, I measured it before I came. This is the storage one, but this the ordinary one. And every single day we've had really good weather, and we each have our own. Sarah and I don't sunbathe naked together and talk about things. But also Sarah's husband doesn't like it because one day she was lying out and he came out and put a towel over her. So I go into somewhere else, which he actually might have found my secret place because he's been going in the backyard more. But anyway, I've collected something like nearly 300k of vitamin D over, I think, 3 weeks, and it did not go up one bit. So where did all that vitamin D go? What's it doing?
Cellular stores, the liver. Right.
Yeah, it's gone in. Yeah, maybe it's in all my receptors, but it's like I was saying to Sarah, it's got to have gone up at least 10.
No, but like but why? Right? Because the blood regulates things. We know that the blood regulates things like glucose so tightly. So why wouldn't the blood regulate levels of vitamin D as well? And so that's where then when you look at that whole pathway there of vitamin D, guys.
It's really important though, because it's been driving me insane. Because first of all, the regular one I'm measuring, because I've got both. I've got the active and I've got the
You're not measuring the metabolites.
Exactly. There's 15 other vitamin Ds that I can't measure.
Exactly.
So they only measure 4 on the blood panel.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They're not even getting it correct because they're not freezing the 125 right away.
Yes,
It's like
that's in your lab coat. Yeah. And also
it's thyroid. It's the same thing, right?
Yes.
Like you're never going to get a complete snapshot because you're not measuring any of the tachosterols, lumisterols, toxosterols.
Right.
Like they're just not getting measured.
Right.
And that's how vitamin D works. It interconverts. They can interconvert pre-vitamin D to vitamin D to lumisterol. Like they can photo interconvert. Like the bonds can literally change based on the light to interconvert back and forth.
But also, how do I know they're not in the mitochondria? Because there's vitamin D receptors in there. So they might all be in there. And same with the thyroid. That people forget there's T1 and T2 as well. And they do something and nobody knows what they do, because why would they be there otherwise?
Exactly.
So it's all one of these things that with the labs, it just annoys me more and more. But I will get to the bottom of the rabbit hole, because sometimes you need a definitive answer to say, okay, these labs don't mean anything that your doctor just told you. However, I do actually know what it means, but it's not what you think it is.
Yeah. Is there a way to test another bodily fluid for vitamin D?
It's an interesting thought.
Yes, like a fat biopsy? Because absolutely, categorically, it goes into body fat, waiting for winter. So maybe mine's going, oh, wow, let's put it all in the fat. So
she's going back to the UK.
I'm going back to the UK, yeah.
But listen, it does that. But remember, melatonin binds to the vitamin D receptor.
Yes.
And so that's winter, right?
Yep.
So again, we're barking up the wrong hole with the labs in the winter, because your vitamin D is supposed to be low. The 25 OHD is going to be low in the winter because you're supposed to use melatonin during that phase.
Exactly. And one of them stays consistent, and the storage one naturally goes down. That's the one spilled over in the blood, but then the body fat's full of it. So that's why if I'm going to do a weight loss thing, I always do it in winter to get the vitamin D out.
Oh yeah, sure. That makes sense.
The thing is, I think it would just come out by itself, because I know with people with obesity, one of the problems is their body, their adipose tissue won't let their vitamin D out, even though there's plenty. So they keep getting shitty labs.
Low vitamin D.
So somebody then stuffs a load of synthetic vitamin D into them, and then it messes up their calcium. And then once you mess up calcium, you mess up magnesium, then that messes up, copper. Then you get iron going mad in the liver. That messes up thyroid. So I am sort of like building it together.
Well, and then LDL. I've seen supplemental vitamin D3 massively increase LDL. So now this person has to go on a statin, right? Their doctor says go on a statin because your LDL is now high, even though they were told to take 10,000 IU of D3 every single day. It's like crazy to me.
But also back to what you said about the nervous system and being happy. If you really upset somebody, like say if you stress them out and all of a sudden the magnesium tanks and the ATP tanks, the LDL is going to jump up. Like if people, when they get admitted into hospital, they often have really crazy LDL. That's because they're terrified and they're really upset. And it's like, because the LDL also helps to stabilize the mitochondrial membrane, like makes it a better capacitor or keeps its electricity in temporarily. So again, it's one of these things emotionally. If you upset somebody, you might give them high LDL. So it's one of these things again. I just don't look at it. It could be so many things. It could be. I just don't know anymore. But then it does just come back down to symptoms, because you can like read labs. No matter what you do, you'll find something that's wrong. But I'm beginning to think now, are these numbers and these ranges and these tests even right in the first place?
I've as someone who used to do so much blood work reading, I literally used to be a guilty pleasure of mine to read all of my clients. I have files.
I love it.
Right? I love it. And at the same time, I think it's complete bullshit.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah. For the most part, I like a good fasted leptin. I think there's a couple of key things that you can trigger.
HSCRP.
Yeah, exactly. Things like that I think are great. Otherwise, I'm of the opinion
It's a cash pig.
Yeah.
It's a cash pig. And people get now the thing too is that people get too obsessed about what their blood, and that is nervous system dysregulation that again, there you go. Right? That's going to impact everything, including your mitochondria. So I don't know. I want to go back to, and this is what I do. I go back to waking up in the morning and be like, how do I feel?
Yes.
I feel great. Okay. Woo, here we go. You know?
Yeah, I do. I feel really great at the moment and really happy. Yes.
As opposed to like looking at my app to tell me how I slept or
I've lost it. Yes. I think I might have lost my Aura ring here somewhere.
Oh no.
It's like a prize for, we're building this giveaway thing because I bought Sarah's husband a castor oil pack and he rejected the gift.
He won't do it.
The thing is, because it started because with my, like exactly as you said, this stupid thyroid thing and stupid me, if I'd have just looked at reverse T3 and realized there's nothing wrong with the damn thing, then this problem would have stopped a year ago, this obsessing. So I had the neck castor oil pack, and then I bought, Sarah gave me one, so I bought one for Matt, and he completely rejected it.
He thinks I'm crazy, and he's like, every time you do those castor oil packs, you do it too much.
No,
and you
I
get too
rate
obsessed with it, and he.
Oh no, I think that I really rate a castor oil pack because it doesn't involve killing anything,
right?
And you're stimulating lymph flow, and it definitely participated in the antibodies going back to normal again.
Yeah,
and
it's nourishing.
Yes.
It builds exclusion
about that
water.
On the beauty episode where I was like, I had done a castor oil pack in sauna, and my husband was like, "Oh my God, your skin looks so good." I was like, "I did a castor oil pack." He's like, "No, that wasn't it."
Oh yeah, but then the latest one is Sarah said, "Oh, I've got a red light vibrator," and obviously being British, I thought
the first thing from our beauty episode, I bought it.
It feels so good.
And I was like doing hydrogen, and I'm like, "Oh, this is so great." And she's.
But I said, do you not have Ann Summers here and lots of, rampant rabbits? No. And I was like, okay. So I actually thought that she meant, but Carrie told me. And she's doing this thing with her face.
Taking a bit of a
good orgasm's probably great for skin health as well, right, everyone? So,
but also,
oxytocin, you skip over the 4 hours of darkness needed to make melatonin. So, there's that too.
I know there's nothing wrong with it. Because the people that make bristle should just make something for the other end. Because I love my bristle. It's no, I've had.
Did I get that in the
yes,
group?
No, we've had people asking. The thing is, I don't think that's a stupid question at all, shining light up your... People want to put coffee up there.
So why not put a red light?
Yeah, exactly.
She's Kelly the torch. I think Kelly Bento told me one time, we were like messaging on Instagram about some of the insane messages we get. And she was like, oh, I had someone that would send me all these messages about the explicit places they wanted to put the torch. And I was like, maybe not the worst idea, but
N equals 1, have fun.
On the subject of that, there's a book you can buy on Amazon. It's basically x-rays of all the weirdest things doctors have ever found inside people. And honestly, it's the funniest thing ever. It's like, it reminds me of Jackass when didn't one of them put the car up his cornhole? And so there's like...
You're referencing
we came to talk about glyphosate.
No, but then
now we ended up with a red light vibrator. Thank you, Sarah.
No, but also a lot of this is like, I found the reason I'm happy and healthy 99% of the time is because I spend loads of my time laughing my head off at all sorts of things, whether it's like with somebody else or on my own or, and that's why it's
so underrated in so many ways. I mean, I guarantee you people are going to have better mitochondria because of listening to this and laughing themselves as opposed to understanding more about glyphosate.
But also we've nearly peed ourselves at things. I love buying things for James and Alexis because there's just been so much funny stuff of like, but it's just so worth it. Like from bouncy houses to the James doing strongman with my grapefruits yesterday with perfect form. Because he just like lifted it like a little strong man, but the form was perfect. I've never seen, and then he lifted it, and then he did a Turkish get-up with a grapefruit, and it was like the form. Because obviously I used to be a movement teacher, and I was just sat in there, like, look, it's like perfect. It's like just so perfect. And he sat in this perfect squat. And then you ruin all of this functional movement by sitting. And this is all looping back to collagen now. So we are going back to quantum. And the other thing I bought here is a standing desk. So, that's again about, posture and movement and collagen. So to loop back to glyphosate.
Wait, before you do that, I love the fact that we all started in movement, right? Isn't that so wild?
Yeah.
And then we got here.
Pilates.
Yes. Personal training. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So collagen and glyphosate, big connection. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's first of all, I think it's a substitution thing that Dr. Senef thinks that glyphosate substitutes for glycine, and we need glycine and proline and collagen to be able to form alpha helices, because proline and glycine are very good at, they're very small, so that it allows sharp turns, so you can make a coil. Whereas if you've got something like glyphosate in there, I don't know the topological properties and whether it just makes the helix messy. And I know that proline can trap deuterium naturally, but also if you've got a load of glyphosate in your collagen, it's not natural anymore. And also, if collagen's not wet, it can't be piezoelectric or flexoelectric. So I'd imagine if glyphosate's in there, it's going to affect the piezoelectric. So your collagen won't make as much electricity. Back to another way, how can I get more power, is to move about and make your own electricity. And I'm sure glyphosate has a role in things like chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, because I know blood vessels have a role, when you just hurt everywhere. And it's not, sure, there's a brain-based reason, but there's also something physical. So it's the vessels, or it's the, the collagen and fascia and pain. So definitely glyphosate is doing something there. And I think, were we on camera when we were talking about Erin Dan loss? Or were we off?
I think we're on. No, I think we're off.
Because I get lots of people with, we've probably all had clients who've had hypermobility, which would have been some kind of Erin Dan loss-like syndrome, or maybe it was just glyphosate. Because I think they first started detecting glyphosate in people's pee in 1993. So,
And Ehlers-Danlos has just boomed. Hypermobility has boomed. Yeah. Well, and not just hypermobility in the form of Ehlers-Danlos, but we're I'm seeing joint pelvic prolapse, joint laxity in general. So here's my working theory on that. So every third amino acid in collagen is glycine, and like you said, it's needed for glycine and the collagen to form these beautiful triple helices. That triple helix, when you have enough of those triple helices together, I believe it's 7 of those triple helices of collagen bound together, you form water nanotubes that literally are superluminal. I mean, it's faster than light communication that can happen, including, like you said, the collagen is piezoelectric, so we can make our own electricity and essentially maintain our charge through movement. I do think that's totally, I think both the generation of that electricity is impaired with glyphosate, as is then the ability to move it through the connective tissue because of those water nanotubes that are likely lacking. The other thing in there is that glycine is fascinating. And I don't know if Dr. Senef talks about this, but I believe it's the only amino acid that can act both as a cosmotrope and a chaotrope.
Yeah, that's correct.
And so so let me break this down.
Because that's Hofmeister series. So we actually mentioned this before, because sulfate's a cosmotrope, so it kind of,
and nitrate's a chaotrope, right?
Chaotrope, and urea is a cosmotrope. A chaotrope as well. Chaotrope. So it's to do, when I used to do protein folding, that sulfate would fold up the protein and urea would open it again.
Right. So cosmotrope means it gels the water, right? It gels it and makes it into its more exclusion zone gelled structure. A chaotrope essentially creates it more bulk liquid water. I've always, I had a dream one night, this was maybe, 6 or 7 years ago, of collagen and glycine and the water acting as a switchboard. It's like you change the structure of the water from cosmotrope to chaotrope, you change the dielectric constant, you change how things funnel. Right. So it's because things aren't going to funnel through bulk water the same way that they're going to funnel through structured water. And so you can literally minutely shift and change how energy can be partitioned throughout the body from such a small level as that level of the collagen, simply because glycine can act as both a cosmotrope and a chaotrope. And when you substitute glyphosate in there, I'm going to guarantee you completely destroy that capability. It's not going to act in the same way. So I just feel like it can create this quantum metabolic chaos throughout the body because glycine has that unique ability. And so specifically eliminating glycine from these enzyme sites and from things like collagen, you're disrupting that key aspect of what glycine can do.
Do you mean glycine just as an amino acid in solution is a cosmotrope or chaotrope, or do you mean proteins with lots of glycine, the protein itself is acting as the cosmotrope or chaotrope?
I'm believing that the glycine in the protein, where it exists in the protein, has the ability to that, and that causes things like its ability to be activated versus deactivated, activation sites, lack of activation sites. So you can gel the water when you need a site to have a specific shape. You can create more bulk water when you want to change the shape to make it less active. You can funnel exclusion zone water. You can funnel electricity a certain way when you need to through glycine, versus if you want to create more bulk water, you'll change, like we said, the ability of that water to flow or hold electricity. So this is just a working theory in my brain based on that aspect of glycine, but I think that could be everything when it comes to what could be impacted.
But also, if we talk about just glycine as a single amino acid, not as part of a protein, glycine's a neurotransmitter as well. Mm-hmm. So then also if glyphosate is that similar, because the thing is, when the body chooses amino acids, because just back to this, it can put homocysteine in instead of methionine, but when it chooses amino acids, it's not stupid. It's like, it does a quantum process. Mm-hmm. So you have to make something really similar for it to actually put it into read your DNA, make some RNA, then translate that and the instructions and put whatever in a protein. So if it gets put into a protein, then how do we know it's not ending up in synapses pretending to be glycine and doing something completely insane?
Yeah, absolutely.
That would affect seizures and, autism, because lots of children with autism also develop seizures.
Mm-hmm. Well, absolutely. And just in general, going back to Ehlers-Danlos, I don't always, or hypermobility, I typically don't just see that. It's a clustering. Typically, it's a clustering of something like Ehlers-Danlos with anxiety, with depression, with more of a neuroinflammatory, like brain phenotype, if you will. And so that would make perfect sense. If you can't turn it down, if glycine can essentially calm things down, it would make perfect sense.
Very interesting.
No, all I'm doing is thinking. I'm imagining Kelly Bento's inbox, with all of the people who've sent her where they'd like to put her torch. It completely just like, oh my, goodness, my mind kind of just wandered, because we're kind of quite near to the end of the podcast anyway. So I know.
I went back to Sarah just doing the red light. So what we're talking about is the bon charge, right? Red light therapy.
Yeah, that we talked about on the beauty episode.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think also then we got distracted, because I was saying, Sarah and I, we're building this thing as a giveaway, because
the detox.
Matt rejecting my presence.
Yeah, he didn't want to do the castor oil.
No, he was like so nasty about it.
Come on.
It's like it's made for him. Yeah. And also he's, I want him to do it because I want him to measure his TPO, because he's got higher antibodies than me, but they're still like super low. It's like, but like his was like 150 and mine was something like 35, and I was what was 75. But anyway, then we've got some deuterium depleted water, because we've been putting that in. I bought a Hydrofix, and we've made mine just be dedicated to inhalation. So we just put deuterium depleted water in and just leave it. But then I had to buy a case, because I had to borrow Sarah's, and I thought, I know, I'll put that in the pack. I wanted to ask you about that pack. Those things you sent Sarah, as a cleanse or a detox.
Oh no, the ones from Identity brand. I ordered like $500 worth of stuff, and I still haven't called them for a consultation yet. Mm-hmm. Like all the gallbladder, liver stuff, because I've been wanting to do a flush this spring.
Oh, from Remedy Link?
Remedy Link.
Yeah.
Remedy.
Because I've got my eye on just like it's been over there for ages.
I've had it in a box.
Sarah won't notice.
Speaking of sticking things.
No, also, I there's something in the fridge called Happy Bum coffee.
Oh yeah, because I bought coffee enema, and then I was like, I can't do this.
I know, because I said I make the Happy Bum.
I bought like a whole coffee enema kit, and then it's been sitting in my house for like 6 months, and I'm just like,
maybe the Happy Bum
does not resonate.
Doesn't resonate. Nope. Nervous system says no.
Giveaway pack, and then it's
getting it
I like that. So that Remedy Link, that Glyphosate essentially acts as, right? I feel like it's and it I think it can get a misnomer in terms of what it does. It really just substitute, in my opinion, like doing a traditional liver gallbladder cleanse, which
like
I don't know.
Andreas Moritz type,
right? Which
is pretty painful and awful.
Painful and long, and you stay up at night, and you're good, and you drink garbage.
Not doing that.
And I understand like that. I do think cholestasis is a thing. I think people have sludgy bile, gallstones. I absolutely do.
Yeah,
hormone issues, thyroid issues, absolutely. But I like the way to support it with these vitamins.
But that's why, like looping back to, okay, don't kill things or be too rough on yourself.
Right.
But what can you do instead? That's why I've brought up this, because I said to Sarah, if Carrie approves it, then I must know about it. And then it's got a suppository in it, so I'm not using it now. But also, I quite like the liver sauce by Quicksilver, because that's really gentle. Because it's back to, I'm doing this thing with a group called the Quantum Cleanup, and people obviously want to just take things as a detox. It was like, no, you're just starting with water, whether you like it or not.
Build your redox.
Yeah,
and
but
you have to build easy.
But again, I'm not against these kind of cleanses or things. I just think some of them are either rubbish, some of them are dangerous, and I'm happy with Quicksilver. And Dr. Shade's an interesting man. I wouldn't buy all of his range, but the liver sauce is just a load of liposomal, bitters and stuff.
I love bitters. There's Remedy Link has some great bitters too, called soybean.
So maybe just talk a bit more about the pack, because it's something for some of my clients. Your pack might be out of their budget because it is $500. Whereas, the cheaper thing you could do, the one I've built, is like $120. But I think it's there again, no matter what, there are always people that, like we know our clients, there are people who are like, I'm never taking stuff to detox. And there's lots of people who are like, I want to do. And what you just said about the sludge and the congestion is like, okay, what do I then do now? So
my whole thing is like, I like to do things for a reason and a set amount of time, right? Like deuterium depletion, I want to give people a timeline and a protocol, right? I with this liver gallbladder, I think it's a yearly support that we do. And whether you choose to do it because you want to drink some burdock root tea, like there's ways to support. I just like to focus, and especially springtime, on that particular pathway. I think that there's an order of operations, like you're saying, Sarah, is like you don't just throw something at the body because you hear you need to detoxify from mercury. Or, there's absolutely an order of operations that needs to take place. And step one of any detoxification strategy is build your redox. And then when you're detoxing what you're physically putting in and on your body. Are you purifying your water? What's your personal care products like? What about the glyphosate on your food? Like, you do the best you can with lowering your toxic burden. That way, as you build exclusions on water, the body can naturally start to detoxify. Then if you think that you have some gallbladder liver sludge, you can support that. You got to make sure you're pooping, right? But I wouldn't push a heavy phase 1 detoxification pathway without making sure that there's so many other things in place first, which unfortunately is a trap that I think a lot of people fall into.
But also nobody wants to do like the mindset side or the negative thoughts, because, old dogs can learn new tricks, and you can change your way of reacting to stuff so dramatically. And it's back to the 0 point energy and putting stuff out into your biofields that just splats straight back in your face. So I think a lot of these people just want to do the biochemistry all the time, or they're really good at doing quantum and they are better than me with food or water, but they still have the dirty ether. Maybe we should call it that.
Sure, like that. Polluted ether, or they've worked a ton on meditation and compassion and oneness, but they have a poor circadian rhythm.
Yeah,
right.
Like exactly.
I think you have to kind of realize where that all these things go together. So I would say that whole mindset ether pollution, if you will, is key. Circadian, quantum, nervous system. And like once those things are in place, including laughing hysterically at least once a day.
Definitely.
I just goes such a long way. Such a long way.
I'm sure there are loads of books about just laughing yourself better. There's definitely the book, The Yes Man, and all he said was yes. And I've definitely come across books about, there's definitely a person that just watched comedy all day because he had cancer, and everyone said, oh, you're just going to die in a couple of weeks. And he's still alive. This is like 10 years old, this book.
That's
just laughing yourself better. I think that's a really important thing.
Absolutely. Underrated because people want to buy a supplement. They want to buy a device.
Yeah. But also there's back to this thing about the ether and other things we've talked about. There's just so much more to this world than we don't understand. Yeah. Like I've got quite into what's her name? What's Cynthia Sue Larson, and it's she's got a physics degree, but she writes about quantum jumps as in parallel universes, but it's all very much daily life things. And like stuff's, been happening, but it doesn't scare me. It just gives me like a great sense of joy that there's like, maybe, stuff that I believe in is actually real, and it just gives a great sense of hope.
Totally.
And also she explains a lot of quantum phenomena, but her argument is, okay, well, molecules can do superposition and teleport, can humans? And in her book, there's sort of accounts of people appearing in different places all of a sudden, and then objects. We all have had teleporting keys.
That happens in this house.
Oh yeah.
No, listen. Oh, but that's the tip of the iceberg. Yeah. I mean, there's so much evidence.
That's why I brought it up at the end, because it's like for next time.
Part 2. Part 2 glyphosate. We'll talk teleportation.
It's like quantum jumps, and it's like things that have happened where, you know, all of a sudden you nearly got hit by a car, but then there was a jump and you had like 3 seconds more time and you managed to cross the road. This is like speaking as a British person who still can't get it which way the cars are going to come.
You're arming yourself with a superpower here. Well, yeah. I mean, just dematerialization is a thing, yes. Right? There's literally thousands of kids in China who have been documented to be able to dematerialize certain objects and then rematerialize them. There's kids that can create a vortex in their brain that with their eyes closed, they can see, right? They can see perfectly even with their eyes completely closed, and they can literally color. There's remote viewing is a thing, right? These are all things that, you know, I'm getting into my super weird side that only my private community and YouTube typically get to hear about.
Remote viewing thing. And then also mine is like also the parallel universes, or being able to foresee something. Precognition.
Yep.
And then I've got time to take a different path.
Totally. These are all things that I think we've really limited human potential in the world and the universe and our just understanding of so many things. But we just have really, maybe it's been imposed on us, or maybe we just have had that mindset of just being so limited. And I've loved going down these same rabbit holes as you, Sarah, because they just make you feel like, wow, potential is just amazing.
So much more empowering than sitting around like nitpicking over like mold and parasites and all this other crap that just
or 5 pounds that you want
5 pounds you can't lose.
We're gonna have to pack up soon. But also the other thing that's I was gonna say about something reminded me that made me really about the duck in chimney.
Oh god,
no what?
Crow. It's a crow in my freaking chimney now. And
Matt said it was a goose. But what happened was there's been this quacking. So I thought, right, there's a kid's toy at like one of the kids, because they have these really annoying toys that make noise, so I kind of take the batteries out or hide them, or Alexis's iPad's been left on, so we've got this kind of bird that likes living in Sarah's chimney. But where this is going is I've got this app called Merlin, and it recognizes all bird sounds. So I go out in the backyard in the morning, there's a cardinal, there's a woodpecker, and get really excited. But the Merlin app, apparently we've got a fish crow in the chimney, but it sounds just like a duck.
It's terrible. It's huge too.
Oh yeah, it's massive. We saw
How
it.
do you get that thing out of the chimney?
We don't know. No, we're not going to go. We're not talking about bird's nest. We've already had an incident with a bird's nest. Which
we're
not bringing the bird in the lamp. No, we're not talking about the bird nest in the lamp. And Matt, but no, we don't know what to do because Matt was said we're going to have to get the third person in and ring it. We've got a goose in the chimney. I was like, we don't.
Why are birds like that?
We don't even know it's a goose, although there is a Canada goose in the backyard because I heard it this morning. So but I think this is just back to, I find great joy and calmness in just identifying all these new birds in a different country and get really excited at they're so beautiful. Like a cardinal, I've never seen a northern cardinal before. It was like, it's red bird, and Matt and Sarah were like, it's red. It's like the red angry bird. It's red. Look at this.
Well, it's how you frame your world, right? Like I've told this to people, like if you go outside, do you hear you could be in a city, do you hear the horns honking and the people shouting and the construction noise, or are you the one that hears the wind in the trees, the birds that are chirping, because they're there? And so it's like, how are you framing this, and recognize and finding joy in every situation, which is not always easy, but it's doable. And gratitude, like you, Sarah, gratitude is the way to go. I'm grateful for. I'm going to be more grateful for the birds as well, including the geese.
The cardinal, but also just to find joy and stuff. And even though like we do laugh at like really like we do laugh a lot here, but then obviously there's other stuff where it's not, it's serious, but
I know, but you have to laugh too. It's got to be balanced. Yeah. And I mean, I love it like kids, right? Just observing kids.
That's where I was going at. Treat it like a kid, because I was like a kid with the cardinals. Then I saw a bluebird. I don't know what that is yet, but it's bright blue. Like I'm sure there's an angry bird that was blue, wasn't there? Because there was a yellow angry bird.
The blue jay, maybe you saw the blue jay. Yeah. But those are I mean, like, go outside and try to pick up a dandelion that has its puff and like blow it and not have some joy in like making a wish and watching those little things fly away into the air. It's just like kids do that all the time, right? They just pick things. And so put a little more joy in your life. Report back to us.
I've got to jump off because I've got to go somewhere, but I think
I have to too. But are you around next week?
Yeah, she is. I think she's still here.
Yeah. So aren't we having a Mother's Day party?
Well, if Matt has anything to do with it, we won't, but we will.
Castor oil packs for everyone.
The castor oil pack. So don't.
And vibrating face wands and liver cleanses.
Yeah, and
coffee enemas.
Happy bum coffee.
Okay, I gotta run too, but part 2, I'm super excited for next week.
Me too.
Yes. Okay.
Bye.